welcome back to the channel here on BVTV, and today's episode is going to be the final episode of the Spotlight series for the Killers, which we're just going to be talking about the Killers overall. Now, we've individually gone through their perks as a trio and their power, but we haven't combined it all together and pretty much put them all, not only just the powers and their perks, but we're also going to put on and add how they are as an overall and just playing with them. Sometimes a killer can be great on paper and then be very horrible, when you're actually playing with them, even though they've got great perks and their power is kind of decent. So today we're actually going to go throughout the killer's overall tier list. Like I said, this is the last episode for this list, so let's make it a great one. So to kick things off in tier D, it is going to be, I'm sorry, but once again, the Deathslinger. This guy just can't catch a break. His power, again, for those of you who don't remember, I did cover more about this in their Killer Powers video. It's called the Redeemer, and his perks, I've also covered all of these. I'm just going to quickly skim through them. Is going to be called Gearhead, Dead Man Switch, and the Hex Retribution. Now, you guys are probably wondering why overall did he get a D. Honestly, he is a very wishy-washy. It really just depends on what map and what game, and for those reasons, we can't really control what map and what game we're on. I said his gun does fall a little bit short of the inconsistency. He does kind of cover up a little bit of ground, but he's honestly too tall. He sticks out like a sore thumb, and his gunshot noise is a little bit too loud for my liking as well. You can literally hear it all throughout the map, and just overall, I mean, this was one of those ideas, honestly, that I feel they were great on paper, and then they kind of bring it in, and I get where they were going from with it, but overall, there is nothing that really helps out the Deathslinger. His perks don't always work throughout the match. It's just one of those things to where I feel like there's just so much missing that could make him so much better, and for those reasons, I'm sorry, Deathslinger, but you're getting the D. Next up in tier D, it is going to be the Hag. Now remember, her power is called the Blackened Catalyst, and her perks are called the Third Seal Hex, the Ruin Hex, and the Devour Hope Hexes. Now, she's got 3 hexes as her perks. I've covered all 3 and a more deeper video on perks. I'll actually leave that in the description if you guys want to see that one, and her power as well. I'll put that in the description as well. Now, the thing with the Hag, she just is one of those characters that every time I've used her, maybe it's just me. I said again, all of these videos have been in my opinion. So if you disagree, hey, that's awesome. Write down in the comment section below. I'd love to have that conversation with you. But the Hag honestly just feels her hex. I'm a big fan of hexes, but when all of your perks are hexes, it just kind of, and they can all be taken away from you. She's left powerless. So then she's left with her power. That's more of like a jump scare situation. That you're like, oh my gosh, she's right there. She could be right there because she can teleport with like a blink of an eye. But overall, it just the fact that her perks can be taken away from her if they're taken down, which seems to be that always happens, is a major big I think avoidance and a red flag that I feel that most people should avoid. I mean, granted, if get her to level 40, or you can go into the Shrine of Secrets and get her perks, absolutely. But just for me, the fact that all 3 of her perks can be taken away from her and then leave her with just her power is one of the only killers that you can actually do that with. So for that reason, she's going to be in the tier D list. Next up, it is going to be the Oni. And so his power is the Yamaoka's Wrath, and his perks are called the Zanshin Tactics, the Blood Echo, and Nemesis. Now, the Oni, it's the reason why he actually got, because I actually don't mind his perks. I think his perks are quite average. But his power alone, the whole Blood Rush thing, or the Blood Demon, and just kind of just like running is pretty cool. You can cover a lot of ground with that. The cooldown time for you to stop running and go back to normal isn't too crazy. It's actually kind of okay. But the fact of the matter is that hitting him with that big, malicious weapon, the fact it takes so long for him to hoist it up and then pop, it takes so long to kind of recuperate from it. You're better off just trying to quick tap somebody with it. And I feel like that kind of takes away a lot of him. And the fact that it still kind of takes a decent while for it to actually hit. It's just so many reasons I can kind of take apart for the Oni, but for those basic reasons I just gave you guys, the Oni is getting a D. At least here in tier D, it is going to be the Hillbilly. Now, his perks, again, I will say this, are quite average at best, and honestly, to me, they fall kind of below average when I really think about it. His a power is called the Chainsaw. His perks are Enduring, Lightborn, and Tinker. The only redeeming perk there would be Tinker, if I'm being honest. His Chainsaw, he's pretty much like the 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 mistake child between like the Trapper and the Cannibal, and then they popped out with Boom Hillbilly. So just his chainsaw ability, it's not too bad, but honestly, I would only use it to break down pallets because trying to actually chainsaw somebody with it, it's super easy for them to move to the left or to the right, and by that time, you're probably gonna have a hard time even trying to angle it 3 degrees to the left or right. So for that reason, sorry, Hillbilly, your chainsaw is kind of ineffective, and you're getting put in tier D. Recap tier D, it is going to be the Hillbilly, the Oni, the Hag, and the Deathslinger. So to kick things off here in Tier C, it is going to be none other than the Legion, his power being Feral Frenzy, and his perks Discordance, Mad Grid, and Iron Maiden. Now you guys are probably wondering, how did Legion get a C? Well, his perks are honestly some of the best in the game, considering the fact that it doesn't have any meter range. I won't say as to much more because like I said, I did a whole video on all three of these perks and everyone else is on this list. And his power, of course, we gave a D to, but honestly, balances itself out. And the fact that he is one of the more agile killers in the game was also kind of what slated him being just barely able to hit the C tier. So for those reasons of him being very agile, his perks being super OP, and I mean the only downside really is his power. But if you can get through that, he actually is a decent killer. So for that reason, he barely makes the C tier. But congrats, you made it. Next up, it is going to be the Ghostface. And the Ghostface power is called Night Shroud. His perks are I'm All Ears, Thrilling Tremors, and Furtive Chase. Now, overall, you guys have heard my complaints in the other videos of where I've said, well, his little hunting knife that he's got is you have to be like super duper close, and you have to be in like breathing distance to really hit anybody with it. I don't mind his stalking ability. I mean, it pretty much it's like a one hit insta down if you actually get the whole red circle, and then you actually get to chase him and stab him. That's pretty good, I guess. Does get the crouch, by the way. I don't know if I actually mentioned that in the power video, and it's actually kind of convenient. He's got like the pig's power of like how she's able to crouch and be undetectable. He is too, for a certain degree. He can peek around corners. I think for overall, they said he's a pretty good average killer. I think that's kind of like I said. If you give him a bigger knife, a bigger hunting knife, something that's like at least somewhat can like feel like you can actually swing medium range and hit somebody. I would actually put him at a B, but I said for those reasons that really short hunting knife is kind of what really stops him from being a B. And his perks are pretty okay. They're not great. They're pretty okay. But overall, the C tier is where you go. Next up, it is the Nurse, and her power is called Spencer's Last Breath. Her perks are called Strider, Thanatophobia, and A Nurse's Calling. Now, overall, if you can get past the nagging of blinking, then she actually is kind of a decent killer. Her perks are really solid, and I think that's what kind of carries her into being into the C tier. So for that reason, the nurse, I said, if you can get past her blinking, that's the only reason. That's the only reason she wasn't a B for me. Is just her power. But the nurse overall, I think, is a very average killer. Probably one of the better average killers in this tier. So if you can get past that, she's a decent killer. Folks, it is the Shape, and the Shape's power is called Evil Within. Its perks are Save the Best for Last, Play with Your Food, and Dying Light. Again, I've covered both of these in two different videos, so definitely leave the links to them down below. Um, the Shape isn't too bad. It's Michael Myers. So honestly, I don't really feel like I have many complaints about the Shape. It's just he's one of those killers that are very depending on your playstyle. So it's he could literally be anywhere from a tier D to a tier B. It just was very hard to place him, and once again, it's still hard to place him. But as an overall killer, I thought the fairest judgment with the B is to not give him a B or a D. I just kind of put him at C because it's again super hard to place him. I feel like it's really just again depends on your playstyle. Are you more of a fast paced killer or a slow paced killer? You want to like really torment them throughout the game. I know one perk like Dying Light kind of negates Save the Best for Last and Play with Your Food. It's super weird and just super all around, kind of like a big head. So next up, it is the Trapper, and the Trapper's power is called Bear Trap, and his perks are Unnerving Presence, Brutal Strength, and Agitation. Now, if I can sum up the Trapper in just one word, I'm going to say average. That is literally what the Trapper, in my opinion, is. He is completely average. His perks, there's nothing spectacular about really any of them. They're literally as average, maybe a little bit above average if you want to, want to give him some brownie points. His bear trap is kind of convenient, and honestly, I really look at the bear trap as like a cruel, comical joke. Anytime I see a survivor actually jump in it, and then like they can't do anything, it's kind of like smack, whack them down. So there's that. But overall, he's a C. So congrats, Trap. So next up, it is the Demogorgon, and the Demogorgon's power is of the Abyss. His perks are Surge, Mindbreaker, and Cruel Limits. In a video I did before this, I kind of explained to you guys how I felt his perks were very lackluster, and his power, yes, it does stop pretty much just pallets. You're able to break pallets quicker. It kind of can stop looping to a certain degree if you get the shred on like the right mark. They seem to have fixed the hitbox now, so it's not as wide as it used to be. Which, let's be honest, it was kind of broken when it first came out. Um, but overall, I want to give the Demogorgon a B, but the fact of how long it takes to transverse through the upside down and all that other good stuff, it feels like now it's kind of falling a little bit flat. I feel like they're trying to make the Demogorgon on that lesion path, and hopefully one day slowly make it better. Uh, Demogorgon, like I said, they had a B for their actual power, and then a D for their perk. So on paper, it sounded really good, but for me to give it a B would be a little bit doing it injustice. So Demogorgon, you're getting put into the C tier. So next up in Tier C, it is going to be the Huntress, and the Huntress is actually going to get our C plus award for this because honestly, she is one of those killers that are as a more psychological, just all overall intimidating killer, and one of the most intimidating killers I think out of all 19 that there are in the game. That lullaby is kind of nasty, but going to her power, it is the hunting hatches as they call them. Her perks are the Beast of Prey, the Territorial Imperative, and the Hex Huntress's Lullaby. And to be honest, you guys know how I feel about hexes in the game. Sometimes they can be useful, sometimes they can't. Again, I went to more depth on this and the perks video, so definitely check that out. But overall, the Huntress for me is honestly one of the best killers I think in the C tier. The only thing that I think stops her from being a B is just her perks. I mean, two of the three are pretty decent, but it's just that third one that is below kind of average. And I won't tell you which one because again, I did a whole video on them, so go check it out. But for me, the Huntress gets that C plus. So to recap the killers in Tier C, it goes like this: the Legion, the Shape, the Demogorgon, the Nurse, the Trapper, the Ghostface, and last but not least, the Huntress. She gets that C plus. So let's go straight into Tier B. So, kicking things off in Tier B, it is going to be the Spirit. And now the Spirit's power is Yamaoka's Haunting, and her perks are Spirit Fury, Rancor, and the Hex Haunted Ground. Now, you guys probably wondering, why does she get a B? Honestly, it is the one Hex perk that I would say I absolutely love, because if it's still standing, well, that's going to be a really pain in the rear end for the survivors. So I'm not going to go into detail with them because I've already made a video about them. Go check it out. And overall, not only her spirits, her Yamaoka's haunting, she can literally dart from one side of the map to the other, and unlike the nurse, actually not take any like fatigue damage. It's really cool to not have to be for 30 seconds before I can go chase somebody again or hit somebody. So for those reasons, I really look at her as a way better nurse and just an overall a lot more scary individual because when she does do her spirit phase thing, she leaves a clone of herself. So then you really believe, I'm going to admit to this, I thought that she was still standing there for no reason. Then all of a sudden she comes right behind me and then whacks me upside the head and puts me on a hook. So again, for those reasons, the spirit, you're in tier D. Not tier D. Haha, caught all of you. Tier B. Alright, so next up is the Plague. And the Plague's power is called Vile Purge, and her perks are called Corrupt Intervention, Infectious Fright, and Dark Devotion. Now, overall, the Plague is pretty solid. I believe she's like one of those above average killers. My biggest gripe with her is the fact of her weapon. Her weapon, I literally, it's not only does it look like a lantern, I also feel like I have to be almost putting you in a chokehold to actually hit you with it. So, for the naggy reason of I pretty much gotta hope that if I vomit on you, you can't really heal yourself until you recuperate and unpurge yourself, and then I use that corrupt into that vile purge to then actually hit you and then hopefully hit you twice to down you. It can be a little bit of a tedious task, but overall, she's meant to really just be very toxic and be the survivor's burden. So, for those reasons, she is a B. So, next up in tier B, it is the Doctor, one of my favorite killers, and the first killer I ever tried in this game. His power is called the Carter's Spark, and his perks are Overwhelming Presence, Monitor and Abuse, and Overcharge. Now, here's the one thing. I love the Doctor. Honestly, it's still one of it was to this day one of my favorite killers to use. I love his shock treatment and the fact that they added Static Blast. You stop camping, you can kind of stop looping, you can stop getting hit with pallets, and you could really torment these people. And honestly, once you get into Madness 3, all they do is consistently scream, so you already know where they are for most of the game. And if they do get out of it, you can shock them again. It is honestly one of the most rewarding killers because you can get those really toxic survivors that really just want to make sure they die and if not just torture them. And that is exactly what he's there for. And you toxic people know who I'm talking about because when I play as him, I get all of you, and I'm a little bit toxic too when I play as Survivor, so I kind of I get what I get. But I digress at that point. The Doctor overall is a B. So next up in tier B, it is going to be the Nightmare, aka Freddy Krueger. The Nightmare's power is called the Dream Demon, and his perks are called Fire, Fired Up, Remember Me, and Blood Warden. To be honest, I have always been the one to crap on his perks. They're honestly circumstance, and all of them kind of suck. But if you want to know more into detail about him, go check out that perks video. His power, on the other hand, I absolutely do love, and I used to be a Freddy main before they even gave him his new power. Before, you'd actually have to like sit there and kind of like chase them, then put them into the dream state before you could even hit them. Now you can also hit them outside of the dream realm because technically they're already going to be put back in it. So it's just like a timer. When you hit them, they automatically get put in it. Um, Not only can you fake pallets every time that you try to think you're going to throw down a pallet, it can be fake and then explode into blood right in front of your face. He's got the blood snares that slow you down if you step in them. He is really one of those mentally just disturbing killers that I absolutely love. My only gripe is his finger claws. They really were longer in the movie than they are in the game, so I was kind of hoping that they kind of would fix that eventually, but they never did. But overall, he used to be somewhat of a decent medium range killer because he used to lunge, that claw thing. He used to lunge at people with it. If you don't believe me, watch The Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Um, but overall, Freddy, you're getting a B. Congratulations. Last but not least, in tier B, and getting the B plus for this tier, is going to be none other than the pig from the Saw chapter. The pig's power is called Jigsaw's Baptism, which, if you've ever watched Saw, you actually know that that's the reverse bear trap that will snap your head open like a coconut. And his perks, the Hangman's Trick, Surveillance, and Make Your Choice. Honestly, the only reason why I didn't give the pig an A is because of how weak that killer is. I don't mean like actual like perks or anything. It's just when you're picking up Survivor, it is so hard to put them on a hook unless they're like 2 feet, unless it's 2 feet in front of you. Because even if they wiggle the slightest, you're already gonna be bouncing left and right like Bing Bong. So it can get very frustrating and annoying. Although I guess the only positive side of it is if they do get off of you, they have a limited time to get rid of the trap. If not, it's going to smash the head open like coconut. But overall, its perks are pretty OP. I never really had a complaint for any of them. I believe that they're all at least above average or really good. And oh, here's my one complaint. Sorry, Pig, but your little blade thing on your wrist, if it could be a little bit bigger, or if we could give you like an actual knife or something, like shank somebody. I don't know, just something a little bit more cooler than the little I'm gonna slice your neck type thing. That would be pretty cool. But other than that, the pig is getting the B plus here in tier B. So just to recap everything in tier B, it is going like this: the spirit, the doctor, the plague, the nightmare, and of course the B plus, the pig. So kicking things off in tier A is going to be the cannibal, and the cannibal's power is called Bubba's Chainsaw, and his perks, which is one of my favorite perks right now, Franklin's Demise, Barbecue and Chili, and Knockout. Now, if you've not seen the first like 10 minutes into the first ever Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that was like 1973, I highly recommend I like looking up that video clip on YouTube because when you see the guy who literally gets knocked the hell out to oblivion, you'll know why I find that perk extremely funny. But anyways, going back to what we were talking about, the cannibal. I like his chainsaw. My only issue is it swings like a madman, and if you miss, I mean, I guess the good thing is you can kind of cover up ground, but how many survivors are actually going to stay in a straight line to get chainsaw when they can go left or right? But besides that fact, um, his perks actually, I feel like what really makes him an A. His perks are pretty overpowered. If you want to know more about them, again, go check out the video that I made. It's about 55 minutes long. You can go through every single killer's trio of perks, and so on and so on. But with that being said, the Cannibal is an A. Next up in tier A, it is going to be the Wraith. And the Wraith is honestly, before we even start, is one of the easiest killers to get a 4K with, and I'll explain that in a little bit. His power is called the Wailing Bell, which makes him invisible, and his terror radius is completely gone. The other thing is you do have like a little bit of a gray outline, but you are super fast when you're in the cloaking ability, and when you come out of the cloaking ability, you got like a 5% speed boost for like 5 seconds, which is really cool and really nice to just keep hacking and slashing everybody. His perks are called Predator, Bloodhound, and Shadowborn. The only reason he didn't get the A plus is because one of these perks, I'm not gonna say which ones, I made a whole video about it, kind of messed him up a little bit. I mean, it was that one small little detail that stopped him from being an A plus in this. But with that being said, I kind of digress. The Wraith is an A. So last but not least, in this, getting the A plus award as the best overall killer, and this may come to a shock of most of you, it is the Clown. And the Clown's power is called the Afterpeace Tonic, which pretty much means when you throw this little potion, it slows him down. It's like kind of like a drug to like slow him. It's like to slow heartbeats and stuff like that. But his perks are called Chlorophobia. I hope I said that right. Bamboozle and Pop Goes the Weasel. All of this combined is pretty overpowered. Yes, he has a really small knife, but consider that this is the first ever killer clown. The fact of his power is pretty overpowered, and it has no range like limits. It's pretty freaking awesome, unless it hits a tree, of course. But overall, he's a really solid killer. So with that being said, I really don't have any complaints for him. So he gets the A plus, and as we're about to go on to the recap. So just to recap everything in tier A, we have the Cannibal, the Wraith, and of course the A plus, the Clown. So with that being said, the Clown is our best overall killer of this series. And before you go anywhere, definitely do chainsaw that subscribe button, elbow drop that like button, and on top of that, if you'd like to support me in a more personal way, I always have my Patreon up. You definitely, I'll have the link down below as well. With that being said, everybody, please do leave a like, leave a comment, stay off click everybody, and subscribe to BVTV.